Hello. It is Mysterious Forces Live. Not at the regular time, not at the regular day. It is 1 o'clock p.m. Standard Time on Sunday, March 17th, which is, yes, St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day if you celebrate it. St. Patrick was kind of a questionable character. But in case you're wondering, this is a green shirt. My studio lighting isn't going to betray that. I have a lot of pink and reds going on in this room, so it might not show up. But I am wearing green. Thank you for tuning in. I wonder how many of you are drunk. Probably not many, because I'm willing to bet you didn't know I was going to do a show tonight, and you weren't expecting this. So we'll see what happens. I'll probably get a lot of views after the fact with this episode. But thank you for hanging in with this show. I, quite honestly, have been really sick over the last 48. And I'm going to talk about a topic slightly, and I'm going to use that as a segue into tonight's episode. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat room. I see Sasha. I see Pursuing X and Sherry. Hello. Thank you, everyone, for being there. I do have Alan Steinfeld waiting in the wings, but we'll get to him, and I'll segue into that. And I'll start with the personal, work my way out into kind of a macro picture, and then we'll get into it with Alan. I'm not going to beat around the bush. By the way, I want to say happy. I want to wish some friends of mine very well. Jessica, Vanessa, let's see, Sarah. Those are some people who are on the healing end of things right now, and I just want to wish them well. So hello to all three of you. Hang in there. I'm thinking of you. I was having trouble not feeling well over the last 48 hours, and that really kind of just screwed things up. And I knew that Alan was going to come on tonight, so I knew that we had something for the weekend that was definitely worth watching, and certainly Alan is. I was going to do a show last night on my own if I had to, but I got delayed because I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version of this, the short story. I went somewhere to see a friend who is in the healing stages of a medical situation. And when I was going to go visit this friend, short story is this really big guy who was real intoxicated and who was already kind of up and bloody and obviously really out of it, tried to force his way into my car in the place that I was at. And this led to a report and security, and you know, when you get sucked into stuff like that. So that threw off the mojo for last night. I just didn't even attempt it because I was completely thrown off. And I'm not easily scared, which is sometimes a problem for me. And I basically put the car in reverse while this guy had a hold of the door handle trying to get into the car. And so it was a little bit scary. No one got hurt. I assume he was taken away. He moved, but security was involved. It was just crazy, but it was a fearful incident. I've never experienced anything like that. So my personal safety felt threatened, and I felt this fear from this out of control stranger. And I'm not saying this for sympathy whatsoever. I'm fine. I was never really truly in danger. So I'm not trying to milk this for anything, and just saying that I'd never had that experience, and it was fearful. And that experience yesterday kind of came on the heels rather of this terrible incident in New Zealand, of this terrorist incident. And I know that everyone knows all about it, and I'm not going to get into the political element of it, and I don't want to get into the details of it. I might do another episode alone later on to kind of make up for the gap this weekend, but I'm going to say something, and I know it might be controversial, but let me explain myself before we get into this. Not too much time had elapsed from when this attack happened in New Zealand, And I went to a dark website, and I knew that they were going to pull the video that the terrorist had made from the internet. But I had a chance to click on the link and watch the video, and I had a tremendous debate ahead of time whether to watch this. It wasn't really something I wanted to absorb into my consciousness. I wasn't doing it for a morbid curiosity. I mean, if I were being completely honest, there might have been maybe 5% of me that had some element of morbid curiosity, but I'm mature enough to resist that kind of a thing. And I'm going to leave it up to you, and I'm still trying to sort it out for myself. I don't know if I have finally been mind fucked by the media. And what I mean by being mind fucked by the media is I can tell you why I watched the video. And there was only really one reason why. And it's because, and I'm not using it as an excuse, this is honest. It's because I do this show and I want to have journalistic integrity. And the journalist in me, I wanted to see the video for myself because I knew that it would be pulled from the internet. It would be hard to see, or it would be tampered with. And I don't trust the media to tell the truth on the incident, the complete truth. And I wanted to see the video of the attack for myself so that I can make my own judgment. And then I wanted to see what the media was going to tell or not tell or hide from people or manipulate or whatever. And that's why I watched it. I wanted to see what was going to happen. I wanted kind of a before and after. I wanted to see the video. Then I wanted to see how the media and governments were going to handle this and how they were going to spin it or not spin it, and see what effect it had. But beyond that, having seen that, it did affect me. And it did affect me in the sense that I was shocked by the brutality of it and the cold, callous nature in which this person injured and murdered other people. And without any empathy, without any compassion whatsoever, just I don't want to over dramatize it, just a heartless person. I mean, this was as if a robot were doing this. This was a person with no feeling or no regard for their victims whatsoever. And so you know, this was like witnessing a psychotic snap of someone, right? When they've completely dehumanized other people. And Alan and I have not talked about this subject. He didn't even know what tonight's show was going to be about. And it's not about terrorism and it's not about politics, but it's about fear. And it's also, I want the focus of tonight's show to be about healing, how we can find healing in a world where sometimes it seems like the bad guys are winning, in a world where a horrible atrocity is committed by someone and suffering and death is the result of these selfish actions. And I want to talk about how it shocks the consciousness, not only of each of us as individuals, hopefully, but how it shocks the consciousness of all of us on a macro scale, on a worldwide scale, and how we can navigate through these difficult times and find healing and find some level of solace when things around us are so chaotic and so painful. And with that, Alan Steinfeld, welcome to the show. I know you heard this, and I'm wondering what your take is.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. No, you're crystal clear.
My take is that something is fundamentally wrong with our world. And, you know, when I read an article by some politician saying that she felt so bad for the New Zealanders, and it's not New Zealanders this is not an isolated problem. We can't say we felt bad for that country or this country. It's humanity. We have to recognize that this is humanity in all shapes, sizes, beliefs, any kind of level of differences. We are the same, no matter how it shows up. When you say, oh yeah, that happened in New Zealand, that happened in California, that happened, that's ridiculous. That's separate. That's what separates us. You know, when you say, oh, this happened to in a mosque or a synagogue or a church. I mean, this this is the ridiculousness of the media trying to divide up. It's happening over there. No, it's not happening over there. It's happening right here to all of us right now. This is us being shot up there in that house of worship. I mean, this is what's wrong with the whole orientation to these sort of violent events, like it's happening over there. It's not happening anywhere except right here with us right now, and that's just so, you know, frustrating to see how the media tags it. I mean, if there's only one reason for anyone to have a gun, you know what that reason is?
What's that?
To kill somebody. So, you know, some places I read in Britain, the police didn't have guns, so the robbers wouldn't have guns. So, I mean, I think gun manufacture, of course, there's the Second Amendment and all that, but, you know, I think we're way past that. I'm sure some of the people will offend to like giving up their guns, but really, really, we have to change the whole paradigm from war to peace, and that just gives us a level playing field. You realize that once we're at peace, then we can start to build a civilization. Until we're there, we are fighting ourselves to get to even ground so we can start to be humans again. And this is what's so really frustrating about this kind of worldwide violence. I mean, because it's, you know, it's what the Saudis are doing to the Yemenites, it's what the Palestinians and Israelis are fighting. I mean, it's, you know, this is why the ETs don't land, I say, because our basic pastime is tribal warfare. That's why we've been entertaining ourselves for the past 5,000 years. You know, east, west, north, south, it doesn't matter. I think the only people who've never really committed war or anybody else are the Australian Aborigines, and they have learned to live in peace. And you know, the other thing about Australian Aborigines, there's no hierarchy. There's no king or leader or this. It's like a collective. And you know why? If you read, what's a book by Robert Lawler? The Morning of the First Day, I think it is. Or the day. Anyway, it's because he says Aborigines never developed agriculture. So they were wanderers. They were hunters and gatherers, and they would mostly, you know, get what they could from the land. And when people stay in one place and they develop an agricultural system, which they've done all over the world, it means you need someone in charge. You need someone to do the crops. You know, it creates a lot of stuff. And without that, you just get people living in small communities, walking about the land, developing a spiritual culture, which the Aborigines, Australian Aborigines, have one of the most sophisticated spiritual cultures that ever existed, and they're self-governing, they're telepathic. I mean, the ancient ones, and they, I think they lived in peace pretty much, you know. So we have a lot of problems we're dealing with here on planet Earth.
Right, and I didn't want the viewers or you to misunderstand and think that we wanted to shine a light on the negative part of this. And I know that this is not typically the kind of topic that you normally address, but the reason I brought this up with you is because based on our first discussion, I thought you were the perfect person to talk about healing and how we can, like, not be ignorant, how we can have knowledge of the world and know that these things exist, but also still find some ray of light within ourselves to find some hope, and also use that hope to help all of us collectively create a better future. How can we, I guess what it is I guess the reason what I'm really asking is maybe on behalf of the viewers or whoever's watching, how can we help people maintain not only their sanity, but their hope throughout times that appear dark, I mean, what can we do to find some positive spin for ourselves?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I do talk about this because my main focus is as a humanist, you know, to recognize humanity in all of us, in our potential, in a world that's trying to awaken to our true nature. You know, our true nature is to help people. It's you know, hate has to be taught. You know, someone had to tell this guy or all those people out there that are, of course, government mind controlled patsies um, to hate somebody else. I mean, and whatever their difference is, you know, I mean, why should we hate someone who's different than us unless we've been told? I mean, little children basically gravitate towards something new. You know, they put it in their mouth. I'm not saying you should do that, but you know, um, this is why how we learn things. We see it, we go for it, and the older you get, the more fearful of the new you become. So we have to be like little children, be wondrous about the universe because it is full of wonder. It is wonderful, full of wonder. And I think media control, media brainwashing. I'll get to the peace and the healing in a second, but I just want to lay out the landscape is that we are controlled by our media, our religion, our politics, our education, our family upbringing. I mean, you broke out of your family upbringing. You created your own reality right there, Alexa. And
Absolutely.
that was an awakening for you, I think. I don't know you that well.
Yes.
But our basic nature is healing. You know, you hurt your hand, you put your other hand on it, you know, you kiss somebody's hurt. That, I mean, that's energy. And so we have to get back to who we really are before we've been indoctrinated and brainwashed by the culture. You know, as Terence McKenna says, culture is not your friend because it will disconnect you from everything you know and innately know. And so if we come back to the land, if we come back to the earth, if we come back to each other, you know, Marshall Rosenberg, he said, people have a need not only to receive love, but to give love. And that is a basic human need. And maybe the person who did this shooting thought he was giving love somehow to his separate group. I don't know if that's true, but there's a distortion in the field to make somebody want to do something like that. And we have to like take education seriously and not do like massive mind control. We have to look at each child and try to help them tap into who they are, which is their purity, their love, you know, their genius, really, their creativity. It has to start there somehow. We have to go back to real basics and put a lot more time, money, effort, energy into education on the basic level. We need to educate educators how to educate, if I'm not repeating myself. So healing starts at home. You know, it does.
Yeah.
It starts, you know, we are healers. We're all natural healers. We're here to really love each other, I think. And it's disturbing when we realize that's not how the world has been set up. And that's a major issue that we are facing now, is how to create a healing society that recognizes everyone definitely as equal, but definitely as deserving love and attention. So we need to return to a culture of love, whatever that means.
Right. No, and I know that that's kind of open to interpretation. And
Yeah.
you're one of my favorite guests I've had on, you and Laird Scranton. And
Oh,
he talks about the Dogon. And he's also keenly tied into Aboriginal and Native traditions and ways of thinking. And I'm wondering if we can hypothesize a little bit, but maybe paint a
sure.
positive picture. How do you think we can forge a new kind of society where we use our technology wisely, but also maybe pick back up some of these older ways of thinking, older ways of being, so that we are not so soul sick and letting the technology feed that soul sickness?
Well, one thing I just heard, this might be off the subject, is that some politician thought there should be a guaranteed income of like $1,000 a month for every U.S. citizen. Have you heard about that?
Yes, guaranteed basic income. Yes.
Yes, I think that would solve a lot of problems. It would get us out of a survival mentality and get us back on track as humanity for what we're really here for. And what we're really here for is to be creative, to make known the unknown. That's what I call creativity. When you tap into that creative way of thinking, you're bringing in a new essence of information into the collective realm, and that might be writing or singing or dancing or painting or photography or science, however creativity shows up for you. But that would be, I think, a revolution. Of course, some people would go out and buy drugs and do whatever they do, but at least they wouldn't be stealing to get that money, you know.
Right.
So I think that would be a huge, huge revolution. We just dismantle the military budget, give people all $1,000 a month or whatever that comes out to. I mean, don't you think that's like a massive change? I mean, that's
No,
revolutionary.
it is revolutionary, and it is. I've heard Joe Rogan kind of parse the issue out, and I I am basically a believer in it. I also know that we as people need something to do, and I know that we would find something to do. I'm hoping that something like that. That was kind of the premise, and there is a point to this. That was the premise between Star Trek: The Next Generation, that the technology had solved the problem of physical need in terms of food and shelter and how clothing. So people's basic necessities were being met by technology, and once there was no need for jobs and competition and economies to get those things,
Mm-hmm.
then people had to kind of reinvent the way they were going to spend their time and occupy themselves.
Well, I don't
Um,
agree with that, really. I don't
okay,
agree. I
okay,
think you give little kids time to play. What we're here to do is play. We don't need to
hmm
invent things to do. We need to educate people in their own creative potential. Everyone is a creator. That's the true value of education. What is your creative play in the world? Yours may be interviewing people or talking or speaking. I mean, and
right,
but everyone knows that. Just ask people what they need, what they love to do. What do you
yeah.
love to do? Everyone has something, and that may just be walking or singing or it's infinite. So we don't have to search for our basic needs. It's right here waiting for us to wake up to this new reality that we're all a part of, that's coming to us. I mean, it's right here, right now with us. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. We're here to create our highest excitement, whatever that, and that may be science, that may be just speaking, it may be telling jokes. There's an infinite amount of ways our potential will manifest if we let it, if we let it shine. We have to trust our creative imaginations and stop putting a box around it and and welcomes ourselves to something greater than the old paradigm. Does that
Right.
make sense?
No, that makes total sense, and this makes me think about. And I guess I want to open the box of your mind a little bit and get
Sure.
into your thinking. And in terms of your point of view and your personal mythology or belief, do you think that there is a good and evil? Do you think there's an objectively separate source of evil, or do you think that's a misguided interpretation of how
Hmm.
things work? And there's a bigger question behind this, but we have to start there.
Well, in the books of Ra, the Ra material, they just simply say there's service to self and service to others. That's one looking way of looking at it. There's also the idea of ignorance, unevolved people like our good friend Donald Trump, maybe, who see that their selfish needs. I'm sure you have audiences that love him, part of your, but I
I
think,
doubt it.
but anyway, I don't know. It's always surprises me when someone says like he's anyway. There's ignorant people who are think that they're coming from so much fear that they need to grab all the power and manipulation, or like have all the money or manipulate the world. And I don't think that's necessarily evil, although it can show up as evil. I think it's people who are unevolved, don't see the bigger picture, and think that only their small little outlook on the world is what matters, and they're separate from other people. So, that's not evil either. That's another level of ignorance. Is there bad evil? I think there's dark and light, and the darkness is really just the absence of the light. Can't shine a dark flashlight on people. You just turn out the light. So, where there's ignorance and selfishness, they have not turned on the lights. So
Right.
what society is doing is trying to evolve us out of ignorance, out of separateness. Of course, we started from oneness and we got dispersed, and now we're going back there. It's like, to complete the cycle. So, yeah, we've somehow lost sight of the center and our connection to each other. And that's not evil. That's just part of evolution that hopefully we're graduating to another level.
I just have to tell you how much I love your answer that you just gave. And I
Oh,
started
thank you.
smiling. I started smiling a lot to myself because in the very beginning of that, and if people go back and listen to that answer, you nailed it right in the very beginning.
What
And
did I
that
say?
larger background question was, has the paradigm shifted from this simplistic good versus evil that maybe appealed to tribal humanity? And we have moved on to where now the paradigm really is about selfishness versus a sense of community. And
Right.
that really seems to be where the big quote unquote, and I don't want to use this term to perpetuate some kind of political idea. And so I'm not using it in this way, but to perpetuate some sense of culture. I lost my part on this, where it really is the forces of selfishness versus the forces of community. And it seems like things are being strained because a lot of people are kind of waking up and they're saying, we can only really do this together if we are a community. And then there are some people who are really kind of on the side of selfishness that says, no, this is mine. I've earned this. I have this. You can't take this away from me. The world's a tough place. And to me, that selfishness, just like you said, and I'm not trying to just validate what you said. I mean, it's the truth. It's a big, large truth, is that selfishness is fueled by fear, that desperate grasp to hold on to something, whether it's a bank account or a car or the clothes you wear or your status in society, that's still based in fear of something that's transient that we have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get through to people who are so scared? Maybe that's the good question. How do we
Well,
get through the fear to these people and not fight against them, but get through their fear?
Well, look at Donald Trump again. I mean, I don't know the guy, never met him. All I can observe is that guy's been traumatized. He was probably, I think he was traumatized by his father, who probably abused him. You know, people who abuse others have usually been abused, and there's so much fear locked up in him that he had to be the best. He had to be the richest, the, I wouldn't say smartest, but the guy with the most power. You know, he doesn't know what to do with it though. He's just getting the power to perpetuate his own protection against the trauma that he can't deal with. So wait, so you asked how do we get to those people? They need therapy. I mean, truly therapy. No, really, because someone
No,
like
it's true.
that,
I totally agree. I'm not laughing. That's not mocking.
right.
That's just
But I
like,
don't think he's smart enough to understand therapy because once you get so used to your own identity, like he's, I mean, there's probably a lot of people like him. We're all probably like him, but he's identified with this person that stands for this, that this, and to get therapy means you'd have to let go of that ego personality, and more people are attached to their ego personality than they even are to their fear and trauma. I mean, that's their under, because without the identification, they don't know who they are, and that's, you know, tries to keep their small little world in place. So, um, but this is why education, going back to dealing with children, going to schools, talking about relationships. A friend of mine's bringing relationship interactions into high schools, dealing, you know, that should be part of education. How do we deal with ourselves? How do we deal with each other? We need things like nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg, where he says you have to express your needs and your feelings before you make a demand. Someone like Donald Trump makes a demand and hardly is in touch with their needs and feelings. But nonviolent communication is a communication technology that allows people to recognize each other as human beings and stop demonizing others. You can only go into a church or wherever, mosque, and shoot people if you demonize them. And when you demonize somebody, you make them less than human. And if you make them
right.
less than human, it's okay to shoot them down. That's the problem with the whole good and evil thing from the old paradigm. If you label someone as evil, then you have a right to kill them. And that doesn't work anymore. Good and
Right.
evil paradigms don't work. This is why we need to change the language, light and dark, ignorance, and whatever, because everyone has a chance of waking up to a greater reality. So, yeah, we have to get rid of the good and evil idea because, you know, as even the worst people have probably a good side. They love their mother or somebody. I don't know. But,
Right.
you know, but there's a distortion. First, there's a distortion in the field. You know, the psychic field is distorted, and that might be government influence. I just saw 60 Minutes. Did you see 60 Minutes tonight?
No, I didn't.
Well, supposedly, like the Chinese or somebody have these like microwave energy weapons that they've been using on different people in the State Department, and they've been,
Like the attacks on the embassies in Cuba and China
yes,
and a couple of other
exactly,
locations. Okay.
exactly.
That focused beam energy weapon.
Exactly. That's what the 60 Minutes was about. And there could be something bigger in our psychic field that's being generated to keep us stuck in this lower place of violence and hatred and self-hatred. And so I'm not doubting that there may be who the archons are. The archons are an extraterrestrial race that some people say have taken over our minds and gotten in the way of our spirituality. I mean, I don't know how deep into a conspiracy you want to go, because I think we do have the power to overcome all of that if we know what that is that's in our way. So if people like Donald Trump realize, well, we can unite people instead of dividing them. We can build bridges instead of walls. We can, see there's really, like John Lennon said, imagine all the people living for today. Imagine no countries, no religion. That's our future. You know, Krishnamurti says is if you call yourself a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a Hindu, you are already committing violence because you've separated yourself from the rest of humanity. And we don't need to call ourselves anything. We don't need to call ourselves men and women or Americans. Or, I mean, ultimately, we don't need borders. I mean, of course, people say that's too utopian, idealistic. We can have cultures. I was just in Mexico. They have a beautiful culture, but doesn't mean if we took down the borders, they all want to be American. I mean, they might, but Mexico, or I wouldn't say Canada has much of a culture, but there are other countries. No, I'm kidding. But
Right.
there's some beautiful cultural exchanges that wouldn't change just because there was one world. I'm not saying one world government. I'm saying a world without borders. I don't know.
Right.
I'm an idealistic. I just think of what's possible. What would be the best future? And of course, somebody will always say something, well, without borders, whatever. But I do think we're one humanity, whatever shape and size we may show up. We have to, I mean, it seems so obvious to me. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't get it. I don't get how it's not obvious to everyone. I mean, you go to other countries, people just want to live their life simply with their family. And that's,
No,
it's just governments that are in the way.
no, that's true. That is the story of humanity. That it is governments that are in the way, and it's still the fear-based idea of property. That it's pretty obvious that if resources, and I'm not really talking about wealth redistribution in the left-right political sense that we're hearing, but I mean in a humanity-based view, if the world's resources were equally distributed and everyone could be brought up to a certain level of basic living, basic standards, basic human rights, which is access to health care, access to shelter, access to food. These are the simple things that this could all be done if we simply cooperated with each other. But this sense of competition and selfishness and property ultimately greed, perhaps, is the very inner core of what feeds the dysfunction that we see.
Right. Right.
And
I
you know, I just it's easy to focus on that, and I guess that's why I wanted to get into this with you, is because I myself as an individual and through the show right now want to dig through this shit, this negativity, and find some way to see light through this and get through this moment, because things appear bleak right now. And I'm desperately personally looking for a way not to see the bleakness, but to see the silver lining.
I don't think it's bleak. I mean, of course, it does seem a little chaotic, but I think we're moving into really good times. I think we're probably the most evolved we've ever been as a planet. I think there's still war, of course, there's still people suffering, but I think there's less. I think the great thing about Donald Trump is that he brought people together. He shows us that there is an equal power in the government. There's not a dictatorship, hopefully. That there are people who will stand up for what is right and true and honest and good. That, those things are shining forth in ways that they probably wouldn't have if we didn't have some sort of tyrant running the show. I mean, of course, yeah. I mean, there's a whole conspiracy side to Donald Trump's idea, like he's really doing good, and I don't buy that. I know a lot of my conspiracy friends think, oh yeah, he's
The
trying.
QAnon stuff.
Yeah, I don't get the QAnon. Of course, I haven't followed it. What do you think of that? Is there something to that?
Uh, I I don't buy it. I think it is. I think it is the result of echo chamber meme culture on the internet, and I think if you apply some really strict logic to the situation, you see it's just not really a viable concept.
Well, thank
And I
you.
hate to say it,
I don't buy it either. What were you saying?
and no, I was just saying I have friends that do believe in it, and by saying that, I'm not disrespecting them. I just have to, you know, in a friendly way, agree to disagree. But I personally don't subscribe to the QAnon stuff.
I'm with you on this. I do not get the QAnon stuff. I don't get the greater conspiracies. I think Donald Trump is really just out for himself. Really, that's like. But it's not evil. That's an unevolved soul. That, you know, we all have lifetimes, and every lifetime you learn a little bit more. You learn a little more lessons. You know, there's that Orson Welles movie called The Ambersons, The Great Ambersons, where this rich guy starts out and he really abuses a lot of people, and then at the end he ends up like working for someone, and there's like the final line, he's had his comeuppance. And I think that's going to happen to Donald Trump when he goes to jail. Or
yeah.
No, I mean,
No,
I think what Mueller is doing, he's like, it's like a chess move. He's backing him into the corner, and when he says checkmate, he's really going to be checkmated. And there's not going to be a move he can make. But we are seeing this chess game being played out slowly. He gets this porn Manafort, get that porn Cohen, get that porn, and you know, and then the king is left alone, surrounded by, I would say, Donald Trump would say the fake news, but in that case, no, I'm saying the crimes he committed, and you know, there's no way out when you're checkmated. So that's my take on the Mueller report.
Yeah, no, I can't help but agree. And it's so sad. You know, like, I'm not going to pretend that I like Donald Trump, but
well, I don't dislike him. He's a great study in human.
He is. I was going to say, I feel sorry for him. I see him as a case for compassion, and I know that sounds silly.
No,
but I'll tell you what, the guy is hurt, and he has become like a caricature of a person. I don't even think that when I see him, like, you're right, he needs therapy. Like, I see someone that really needs therapy, that needs to break away from the caricature, the ideal of what they think they are, because he is just like kind of zombie walking through this role of whatever he thinks it's supposed to be. But it's pretty obvious. It's like the emperor wears no clothes. There is no substance there.
Right, but I don't think he can ever break that shell that he's created around him. It's so dense. I mean, who else could lie in the same sentence? Really, you've heard those things. He says one thing and then he will contradict. There's no sense of self-awareness there. And that is someone who's, my judgment, it's total judgment, unevolved, who hasn't looked at himself, who hasn't felt like the pain that because if we don't feel our pain, we're not going to feel other people's pain. And if we ignore our pain, and we all have it from whatever life has given us, that if we don't let ourselves feel that and we numb ourselves out to that with drugs or power or money or women or with this and that, then we're never going to realize what's like inside of us, which is not pain, but the compassion for pain, you know. So yeah, I feel sorry for him too, because he's so dense. There's no hope in this lifetime of him having any level of awakening. It's like he's bought the culture on the most superficial level of money and power. I mean, I just read a great quote that said, some people are so poor, all they have is money. So,
That's absolutely true.
but that's Donald Trump. But he doesn't even have money. I mean, he just has lies and a false sense of identity as ego. And he is a great study in humanity. If you want to study evolution and social evolution in terms of like what what society does to create a kind of like limited person, that's he's a study in that. And it is very sad that and he does have a compassionate side. I mean, you could see that occasionally it comes out and he goes, yeah, everyone has the right to health care. He'll say stuff like that, and then the ego will come in and go back to the money. So there's, in his own persona, this is my analysis, there's conflicts between his own humanity and his own sense of false pride and ego. And just studying him is fascinating. It really is, because we can learn so much about our own self. You know,
No, I
of
agree.
course.
Those are. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. Of course, unfortunately, he's pretty destructive. But what were you going to say? Sorry.
Oh no, those are salient points.
Yeah.
Very well said. I want to shift gears a little bit
Anything
because
you want.
sure. I want to talk a little bit what you're doing now and what your work is focused on right now, and as we get through the rest of the year, because we're
Right.
really kind of just moving into spring or getting ready to. What are you working on right now? What's the focus of your work?
Well, what I've been noticing, a lot of people coming to me, and this is out there. People are saying they're getting downloads, ET downloads. They're saying they're waking up to this other sense of reality that has to do with expanded consciousness. Like that the ETs, whatever you want to call these beings, in a way are not out there, but they're part of a greater consciousness that we've walled off, speaking of walls. And they're breaking through this kind of barrier, this mental barrier, and they are starting to inform a greater consciousness. And many people are waking up to, someone who calls them IBs, intelligent beings, but this sense that who we are as human beings is part of a cosmos of consciousness. And we're not, the whole idea of the UFO as hardware is becoming outdated to one of being software, you could say,
Okay.
which is like an expanded sense of mind. It's
Uh-huh.
hard to communicate it because there's no language or culture.
An extension of consciousness.
It's an extension, but it is actually who we are. Like our
Okay.
consciousness is not isolated to this planet. It's really galactic or cosmic, or it's like we don't know who we, this is sort of the work, and we don't know who we really are. It goes back to the original statement. We've been conditioned to think we're human beings in a human body, but we are not just that. We are part of a mind, a great mind that is so much more expanded than this little human body. I mean, it goes back to what the Aborigines talk about dream time. They say, we're just here to caretake the earth, but we're not really of the earth. We're this sense of consciousness, and it's beyond what the spiritual teachers have been said. Oh yeah, we're all consciousness. No, there's an awakening to this. If I say cosmic consciousness, it sounds really cliche. There's an awakening to a finer sense of a consciousness that pervades the universe and is everywhere. And beings on other planets are part of this greater sense. But there's like been a barrier. It's sort of as an extension of this previous discussion to labeling ourselves. It's been a barrier to our human identity. So we have these other senses of intuition and telepathy. When I teach remote viewing. I've taught that recently in Mexico at Alex Gray's, which I'm sorry you missed. I'm sorry about that whole mess up there. You know, well,
okay.
what can you do? But so there's a sense that there's like you could put your consciousness anywhere. If I say put your consciousness on the ceiling of the room, and we're in a room of people that do that together, you can actually feel all of us on the ceiling. You can. There's a sensorial awareness. And I think the indigenous people had this. They knew they weren't confined. So this idea of mind is a limited thought form meme. I mean, this is what remote viewing's teaching us. We're all psychic. We're all intuitive. We're all, you know, the Native Americans knew when they were facing different directions, they would pick up different energies. We have to start to develop these subtle means of awareness and these like ability to communicate with trees, which is the original religion. It's the shamanic sense. You know, if you sing to a plant or dance to a plant, it will tell you what it's good for. There's just another window of perception of this all-pervading reality that's not just shamanic. It includes that, like you can have a relationship with the moon, and it will tell you things because it not just has a consciousness, but that thing is an aspect of your consciousness that's reflected inside you. So we have relationships, or we can, with animals and talk to them, and it's a new field of psychology that it's like shamanic psychology, but it transcends a sort of primitive, not primitive shaman, because they weren't primitive, but this kind of basic shaman that includes a galactic awareness. It's how to open our minds and start to channel who we really are. Like the way I got into all this goes by seeing a channel, you know, someone who would channel this 35,000-year-old Atlantean warrior, the Ramtha, for one. Did you know who Ramtha, the enlightened one, was?
Jay-Z Knight.
Jay-Z Knight. Well, Ramtha, in that form, said,
Yeah.
the big mystery here is not who's channeling through Jay-Z's body. The big mystery is who's channeling through your body. What's that consciousness? What's the source of that consciousness? Where does that come from? That's the big mystery here. Channels will come and go, but who you are is forever in whatever form and disguise we show up in. But so there's a awakening happening to what Aldous Huxley called the mind at large. That's how he called it. I mean, so many people call it different things because there is no one name for it. That you could call it the Tao. I mean, you could call it, but you see, psychology has done us a great service, but now it's doing us a disservice by not trusting our own inner voice. If you hear an inner voice, you might think you're crazy. If you listen to the psychological paradigm, or you might think you're enlightened or aware, or you might want to trust that, you know, because I think Julian Jaynes in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind talked about the difference between this like infinite awareness that we've shut down with the intellect and making the intellect the ruler, and we disconnected from the intuitive sense of a reality that's always talking to us. The birds are talking to the trees, the universe, however things show up in our reality, not just symbolically, but energetically, are talking to us. And I think if we make ourselves aware of that kind of interface, we'll start to tap back into who we are as source beings and as cosmic beings. but we need to develop a culture that does come from the shamanic traditions. I would say that's the closest, because once you get to religion, you've already lost it. Once you put people, middlemen, in charge of you and your source or your true being. I mean, we need healers, we need mystics, but we don't need people to tell us this is right and that's wrong. That gets into good and
Right.
evil again. So, but we
Hmm.
need to trust our own psychology. Whatever, our psyche is a better word than psychology. The
Hmm.
psyche is the part of us that includes both the subconscious and the conscious mind. It is more of who we are. I think the Seth books talk about that the best, the Seth channeling books.
Hmm.
I think channeling has been a great gift to us in the 20th century. Of course, it's been around since the Greeks or even the prophets were channeled. But, beings like Seth transcended dogma and religion in order to give us a true essence of what spiritual intelligence is. And this is where I think we're going. Of course, the Aborigines, again, have always had that. They've never forgotten that, at least the ones I met. And they are in touch with it. And the Native Americans who connect to the fire wisdom. But, without making it a dogma, it's something
Right.
we all are. Did I answer a question, or was I just talking?
No, no. I mean, no. You were making a point. It was
Yes, that's what I'm
perfect.
working on.
That's what
Trying
you're
to
working on. Yeah.
trying to figure out like a sort
Who
of
we are.
language and culture of understanding. I mean, maybe it exists. Maybe I just don't know it. I just saw a movie called The Symbiotic Universe, I think, about Lynn Margolis, who was married to Carl Sagan, who realized she was the first to realize that creatures evolve through cooperation and not competition, and
Hmm.
and that's how species also evolve through incorporating other species into them. Like, the nucleus was another bacteria that was incorporated into a bigger form and became an organ. And so I think there's something about us where we're incorporating, let's call them ET species, or we're being incorporated into that. I mean, there's a symbiosis that's
Hmm.
happening that is evolution. And I think this is the evolutionary point that we're at in this moment of time, where we're seeing what doesn't work and we're seeing the possibility of what can work.
Right. Do you
That's
think another way that this could be expressed would be to say that not only in the way that there's a physical universe and that it is this vast expanse beyond what we can really comprehend with the human mind, do you think in the way that that physical expansive universe exists, that there is also an equally large and equally sophisticated expanse of consciousness, and that these are maybe unified at a certain point, that there is a crossover point where they're unified, but that this expanse in consciousness is the source of us, and that we, to find ourselves, have to also explore that expanse of consciousness on the inside, that inner journey?
absolutely. Well, I think the physical universe is just a really small piece of this universe of consciousness. And yeah, I think we're moving into this. The Nagua is the sense of the sixth sun, where everything is energy and not matter. And so, yeah, there is a conscious universe. That's a good way of putting it, that we're moving into, that includes all these other realms and ramifications of possibility. And we are becoming the conscious universe, and less dense, less material, and more mystical, I would say, if that's
Uh-huh.
I mean, more part of the etheric, less, but more solid in our concept of being,
Mm-hmm.
that, and it also has to be grounded in the physical, which is actually makes it even more powerful, but not only physical, but we have to understand and welcome the physicality of who we are, is sort of what I would say. Oops,
Yeah, no,
sorry.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's okay. So I know that you in January it was delayed, but you did the remote viewing workshop at COSM, Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, and you just went to Mexico. What else are you doing in terms of workshops or appearances for the rest of the year? What's on your schedule?
Well, I have a lot on my schedule this year, but I just want to say the remote viewing workshops are so remarkable because I show, and you can probably see it. So if you do a remote viewing workshop, don't watch this tape. But if you want to watch it, I open the class. I show this remote viewing session I did with Russell Targ, who started the remote viewing program. Him and Hal Putoff and Ingo Swan for Stanford Research Institute began that program for the CIA. So I show a video of Russell showing me how to remote view, and I show that to the class, and everyone in the class gets the target. They get what's in Russell's pocket, and it's just amazing. I'm just truly shocked how many more people are awakening to this other level. I've never seen anything like it. The more I show the video, the more people who haven't seen it do get it. But anyway, so I'll be traveling around doing some of that. I'm going to be at the New Life Expo, doing a little mini course on remote viewing. That's this coming weekend.
Where's that at? What city?
New York City at the New York Hotel, 34th Street and 8th Avenue. It's going to be the 22nd to 24th of March. In April 26th, I think, to the 28th, I'm going to be in San Mateo at the New Living Expo, lecturing with the Hertogs on ET realities. And then I'm going to be May 8th to the 13th at Lightning in a Bottle, talking about
really? And is that in Vegas?
Bakersfield, California.
Okay.
Talking about awakening to what I was trying to say, this ET sense of reality, how to realize that we are these galactic beings, but not in a cliche sense, but in a way of using your own mind in a new and exciting way to wake up. So, and then May 31st, I'm going to be at Contact in the Desert, which is really my all-time favorite event. That's in Indian Wells, right outside of Palm Springs. Get a ticket, go to contactinthedesert.com. It is the UFO conference probably in the world. You know, there's probably the best researchers and experiencers, and just as a sense of love that permeates that place. It is. Have you been there?
Yeah, I was there last year. As a matter of fact, that was my first.
Great.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Love? I don't know what it is, but there's this sense of just pure oneness there. And my favorite people are going to be there: Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan. Well, Russell Targ is going to be there talking about remote viewing. JJ Hertog, Desiree Hertog, these are great friends of mine. We're going to do me and the Hertogs are going to do something at the Integratron, which was built out in the desert as a kind of welcoming of ETs. If you're into that, is a movie out that I just helped executive produce called Calling All Earthlings, which is about the Integratron, and George Fantasso that built that in the 1950s and 60s until he died mysteriously. I think the government got to him I'm just doing another little conference at in Rapid City, South Dakota, with Native Americans and people like Whitley Strieber, trying to bridge this consciousness with the indigenous people out there. So that's you could look up. What would you look up for that? Well, just go to my website eventually.
Yeah, and you have your YouTube channel. I just want to mention really quickly that you're a lot more active on YouTube, and your YouTube channel is also a great place to get information.
Well, actually, that's really where, I mean, you know, social media is endless, so I put my energy into YouTube. Oh, there's one more great event that maybe you want to be part of. It's the UFO cruise happening October 5th to the 13th along the Mexican Riviera. Look up UFOcruise.com. Tell them you heard about it through me. This is going to be, again, some of the top UFO researchers in the world going to be on this cruise. You're going to have them all to yourself for 7 days. We're going to do sky watching. We're going to stop at a couple of archaeological sites. We're going to do meditation. We're going to do lectures. I think it's really going to be fun. It starts in San Diego, goes down to Mazatlan, Puerto Vallarta, Cabo San Lucas. So that's going to be a real highlight. Leaving out of San Diego. Also look up Portal to Ascension. I'm going to be there this year. It's nonstop, but it's really so much fun because we're spreading the word of a kind of shift, a transformation, and more people are coming to this as a sort of fun gathering, as a way of learning. You know, for me, learning and entertainment has always been the same. This is what I do. If I want to go out on a date, I go to a lecture. I mean, or something like that. You know, it's like this is the new culture. This is, you know, TED Talks, all that. This is fun for me. This is the Aquarian age. This is just how it is. So that's
absolutely
a few things I'm doing. But
all right.
Yes. Also going to go out to probably the beach this summer too.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I miss the beach. I want to go too. Thank you. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Say coming to Phoenix. I don't know if I'll be there this year. Is the Keys of Enoch conference that you might go because you're out in that direction. But I was going to go, but then it just got too busy, so I'm not sure about that. So, what were you going to say? What's happening with you? Tell me where you're going to be.
Oh, I've been shifting some things around, and I'm not quite sure. I know for sure that I'm going to be at the International UFO Congress later this year. That's in November this year instead of February.
Oh yeah, I just interviewed Alejandro. He's great. Yes.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
So that'll be that's kind of like my home convention, and I'm also doing something in October called Disclosure Con, and that's in Pine Top, Arizona, and that was done up last year, and that was a really good time. So I've been invited
putting
back.
that on? Who's organizing that?
The organizer of that is Doc Skinner, and it's 1028 Live Productions. You can find him on Facebook or 1028, and Mike Barra is going to be there, and a few other people. And so
you're not coming back to Contact this year?
No, I may very well come back. I was just I had a couple of projects I thought I was going to do, and then one of these trips kind of disintegrated. And I'm also really wanting to plan a trip back to Cosm later in the year, and maybe meet up with you there. Or
yes, definitely in July or August we could do that. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm holding that out too as a possibility. So it's just kind of hit and miss, but I know those are definite places. I'm just kind of focusing on the audience for the show, and also we're going to go do some locations because Arizona offers quite a few physical locations that are interesting places.
Well, so, Travis Walton is out there in Snowflake. You know, he's a great guy.
Absolutely. And Travis Walton, he was at Disclosure Con last year, and Snowflake is not too far from Pine Top. It's all up there on the rim.
You could go to where he was actually abducted, right there in the woods there. Yeah. I've been to the Rim Institute, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Is that still there?
I don't know. I haven't heard of it. I was just there for Disclosure Con. That was my introduction to the geographical area up there.
Well, but just want to ask you, did we do anything on this show? Did you learn anything? Was this good? Was there, how was it?
Absolutely. No, this is very good. I really felt like it was interesting. Our first conversation, our first interview went so well, and this one did too. And you were just someone that we haven't met in person or anything like that. It's not like we've had, but you and I seem to really understand each other really well. We have a good rapport. And it just seems like intuitively, once we start talking, you just kind of say what needs to be said in that moment. And I just enjoy the back and forth in these conversations a lot.
Thank you. Well, you help bring it out in me, I guess, because I have no idea what I'm going to say. But, you know, what I get from you is there's a sense of humanity, and this is what I resonate with, and that helps bring out my sense of, you know, what the Dalai Lama said. His religion is kindness, even though he's the head of a religion, but he says his religion is kindness. And I do think that we have to remember that. That will get us through the hard times. And, you know, let's just try to remember how to be kind. I mean, I go to sleep myself sometimes and, you know, get upset. Oh, how did I go unconscious there? But, you know, yeah, the price of freedom is constant vigilance. That's what,
Absolutely. Well, at that, you know, I'm just going to have to hit the happy music. Alan Steinfeld, thank you so much. This was another great conversation. Yes. Catch Alan's YouTube channel. He's got several appearances.
YouTube.com/new realities.
That's it. And I'm going to do this for the professor once again. Like and subscribe down below. No, I'm not being obscene. I'm telling you to like and subscribe. If you haven't already done so, please share this episode. I like it. My subscriber numbers are going up. I'm getting close to 500. I'd like to see it hit 500. If you can help with that, that would be great. Thank you so much. I want to say hello to the Pearsons. Sarah, I hope you're doing well. Jessica, I hope you're doing well. Vanessa, doing well. Sherry, thank you so much for moderating tonight. Thank you to the professor. Thank you to Pursuing X, CW, Occult Priestess, Jiggy, all of you, everybody. Jimmy, thank you so much. And Alan, thank you. Catch you later. Bye.